radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Thank you for joining us. Today is January 24th. Man, the year is flying by. And we have a friend of our show, Mr. Chuck Johnson from Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility, on the show with us today. He has a lot to talk about. We're gonna the conversation will go wider than just the Hanford and nuclear issue. So thanks for joining us, Chuck. We really appreciate you coming back. Oh dear, I think Chuck got cut off. Here we go. That's all right. We're used to this. We can handle it. Let me see. Hang on just 1 second. It looked like he was on the phone with me, but he is not. So here we are. And Chuck, are you with us? Chuck, let me hang him up. Let me see. I think we're running into the same issue that we did with Carl Grossman. Maybe his phone won't hang up. So I'm going to hang up his phone myself. I'm going to do a sort of a forced close. Well, this is a bit of awkwardness, but you know, we are fighting the nuclear industry, so what do we expect? Let me give him a call back. And Mr. Chuck Johnson. I'm excited to talk to Chuck because there's a lot going on. Rick Perry's about to be appointed as the Secretary of Energy, the Department of Energy.
Hi, Lonnie.
Hi, Chuck. Did you get cut? At what point did you get cut off? Did you hear the music?
No.
So
I got cut off basically. I was put on hold, and just kind of
hanging on. As soon as the music, but it's as soon as the music came on, then it cut off. Okay, well, let's move on. Well, look, right. Thank you for joining us. We're live. Our listeners are listening to the Age of Fission radio show with Lonnie Clark and our guest Chuck Johnson from Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility. Chuck, thanks for joining us. First, let's get to really what your activities are that you do most of the time. Is there anything new going on in the nuclear industry other than the fascism that they're going to put Rick Perry in as head of the energy secretary?
Well, why don't I go ahead and start with that? But there are a couple of things in the world of reactors. But as far as the U.S. Department of Energy, the question always was after Trump was elected as to what type of energy secretary we were going to get. It was more like pick your poison. And we knew we weren't going to get someone who was going to be very friendly to the environment. Rick Perry definitely fits that category. And one of the most disturbing things about him, and I think maybe you talked about this on your show already, but is that he presided over the establishment of a low-level waste dump in West Texas, Andrews, Texas, that one of his campaign supporters owned. The guy's now passed away, but the family continues to own this waste dump. And it's the prime site for a proposed temporary storage site, they put that term in quotes, for the nation's high-level radioactive waste, spent fuel from our commercial reactors. Because Yucca Mountain was not opened up, the U.S. DOE has now been making plans and investigating setting up a temporary waste site for starting with the reactors that have already closed down and that have spent fuel mostly sitting in dry casks at their sites with no place to go. And this family in West Texas that owns this waste dump has a pipeline to Rick Perry and his support in the past, so we can expect that the Trump administration will pick up where the Obama administration left off, promoting this waste dump.
That's very disturbing about the dump site in Texas. I knew that there was some big catastrophe that he'd overseen in relation to that. That's my big objection to Rick Perry. If he had done his job right, I mean, he sat on the board. Until December, he sat on the board of a nuclear waste corporation that handled nuclear waste. And in my view, Trump appointing him lets us know that really the issue with the nuclear industry, which is most of our Department of Energy budget, is about waste. They're freaked out about it because we are about to begin the decade of nuclear waste. It is about it. We're exploding with it here.
Well, yeah. I mean, the problem was that in the 1980s, the Nuclear Waste Policy Act set up a process for selecting a high-level radioactive waste permanent disposal site, and they narrowed it down to 3 sites. And because of politics, they decided that since people in Nevada were the least organized against it, that they would just select one site. So in '87, they narrowed it down to Yucca Mountain. And then the opposition locally took off, and a lot of the data that came back in terms of characterizing that site in Yucca Mountain was not very good. Surprisingly, in the middle of the Nevada desert, that site had a lot of water infiltration, which to people who are sort of unfamiliar with desert geology, you don't necessarily think of the desert as having, problems with water leaking into sites. But apparently when it rains in the Yucca Mountain area, the water percolates straight down through the proposed waste dump site. So they were talking about, before Obama canceled the program, they were talking about having to put drip shields on top of all of the waste casks in order to prevent water from causing the waste canisters to corrode prematurely. The big problem with storing spent nuclear fuel and the radionuclides that are contained within it is that they have to be isolated from the population for at a minimum 10,000 years under the EPA regulations. Some of the materials will remain deadly for hundreds of thousands of years, but the minimum standard is that you have to keep it out of the water table for 10,000 years, and it didn't look like they were going to be able to do that.
They have not done it.
Yeah, and that aquifer actually extends from Yucca Mountain down 50 miles to Las Vegas. So it isn't like it's just in the middle of a totally unpopulated area of Nevada. And even if it were, that land is part of the treaty land of the Western Shoshone. So it's, it's the entire Mother Earth is a sacred place, and we need to protect all of it. And this idea, I think that in some urban areas you can find political leaders who seem to be willing to sacrifice rural areas to radioactive materials, especially if those politicians are still favoring pursuing nuclear energy. So we see this in Washington State. You have the entire leadership of the state, including the Democratic Party, favoring reopening Yucca Mountain, which is,
I know,
to me, really disgusting NIMBYism. You know, as bad a problem as Hanford is, I wouldn't wish transferring that problem to some other community.
No.
You know, we need to figure out solutions that actually technologically work, rather than just taking our problems and moving them somewhere else.
Well, you can't sweep it under the rug. It's still going to be there. So it doesn't matter. And this is the issue with, like, St. Louis. That's why I find St. Louis so completely offensive. As if we can just ignore the nuclear waste that's affecting not just St. Louis, but all the people downstream of there. I mean, it is an outrage that our country sort of glazes over when you talk to them about nuclear waste, as if that's a responsible response. If most Americans knew the gravity of nuclear waste contamination, pitchforks would be, we would have, you know, the millions of people that came out in the street on Saturday. I mean, when you hand them a flyer, I handed out flyers that had a little bit about the whitewashing of nuclear on it. People get the idea that all these guys that they're setting up in there are fascists. But their eyes glaze over. They do not want it. That brainwashing is so complete on nuclear. It's like talking to Patty Murray's office or Maria Cantwell, who are the senators there. They staunchly disagree and think that nuclear waste is just not that, not that big of a problem. They don't think they have a problem in their state.
Right. Well, they think they have a problem in that they'd like to get the material sent somewhere else, but by and large, they feel like once that's done, problem solved. That, to me, that's the disturbing thing, and that's why this temporary waste dump in Texas or in New Mexico is the other site that they're considering, is to me dangerous because it makes people feel like a solution's been found when it hasn't.
Right.
And it puts out a green light for generating more of this material that we don't know what to do with. Plus, you're moving extremely hazardous material that, if there were some sort of serious accident, would cause a major contamination twice. Because this is not the permanent site. West Texas is not being proposed as a permanent site. It's just a temporary site. So you move it there, and then you have to move it again. So I don't really, to me, it's PR, and it's dangerous PR to support these temporary sites without a permanent plan, with it that's technologically sound. So that's the big downside of Perry. But of course, we had that with the Democrats before, so I'm not sure how different that is.
Yeah.
Meet
the new boss, same as the old boss. Yeah.
Right. And on the plus side, same as the old boss, we had an administration that was pretty supportive of wind and solar. And I think Rick Perry may be as well. I mean, that may be the plus side of him being appointed. Trump administration, Trump made a lot of negative comments about renewable energy. And obviously he's still president, so those thoughts may still carry the day. But there's a lot of red states that have gotten heavily into renewable energy, which really is helpful. Texas, Iowa, states that are not that are represented by Republicans in the Senate and in Congress. And then you got Perry in there. And I think that the renewable energy industry is established well enough that they're enough of an economic power themselves that I'm hoping that the Trump administration won't try to shut them down. It's very important that they don't. So I don't know.
I don't know.
Jury's still out on that one.
I think I'm still going to call my senators and call the other senators and tell them. I mean, Rick Perry is just too illiterate. He has a bachelor's of arts degree in animal sciences. You're going to tell me that is the fact. He does not
Yeah.
have any basic science above animal husbandry. I mean, he knows nothing about physics. He really cannot comprehend the damage he's going to do by disregarding the safety of this nuclear arsenal that we have.
I totally agree that we should be doing that, but I think we also need to remember for ourselves that we had a genius MIT
true
scholar and a genius UC Berkeley scholar who were heading up our agency promoting new nuclear energy.
true.
And,
Clicking their heels and saying Sig Heil. I got you.
I mean, I agree he's not qualified, but people who were qualified weren't giving us good policy either. So we need to remember that. But yes, absolutely. I think to the extent that he's supporting things like this temporary waste dump, these are excellent reasons for people to call for him not to be confirmed, and I hope that they will. And we're encouraging them actually here in Oregon. We're encouraging people to contact Senator Wyden, who serves on the Energy Committee, that's considering his nomination to vote against it. So yeah, so that's what we got on the Secretary of Energy front. There's been some interesting things happening in the world of nuclear reactors. One is the continued implosion of two of the largest nuclear reactor companies in the world, Toshiba, Westinghouse, and Areva EDF. It's just amazing how bad off they are financially. Toshiba Westinghouse is in danger of being delisted on the Tokyo Stock Exchange as a major company. That's how bad their stock is doing.
They should be doing bad.
By their nuclear power subsidiary. People said when they bought Westinghouse, which I forget exactly how many years ago, I think it was maybe 7 years ago, something like that, maybe longer, that they paid too much for it, and then these 4 reactors they're building, 2 in Georgia and 2 in South Carolina, plus reactors they're building in China, are all behind schedule and way, way, way over budget. And their stock is just taking a horrible beating, which makes me extremely happy, I have to say. It's strange to be cheering on capitalist economics for me as somebody who isn't necessarily a confirmed capitalist, but capitalist economics has not been very friendly toward nuclear power for a really long time.
Well, it's a failed experiment. It's not a capitalist venture. It's a fascist. I mean, the whole thing gives them the weapons that they want, the nuclear weapons. This is the whole thing. It only supports the nuclear war industry, and it contaminates the rest of the environment. To me, it is the most egregious failed industry I've ever seen in my life. And yet we are forced through our tax dollars to continue to pay for it. I mean, it's beyond comprehension, the disconnect.
That brings up the other thing I was going to talk about, which is that the New Scale Corporation, which is a subsidiary of Fluor Corporation, the large Texas engineering firm, Texas-based engineering firm, is just filed its formal design proposal with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So this is a new design, what they call a small modular reactor system. It's not a singleton. A lot of people are under the mistaken impression that these 50 megawatt reactors will be built independently and singly, but again, the economics steps in. If you did that, you would lose so much money it wouldn't even be close to being economical to do it. What they envision is a pool of water underground that would hold up to 12 reactors, of 50 megawatts each, about 600 megawatts in total. And that is what they would have to build to even approach becoming economically feasible. So they have now moved their first reactor, their prototype completion date, from 2023 to 2026. The proposal is to settle on a site on the Idaho National Labs property near Idaho Falls. This is a federal experimental reactor zone where there are 70 experimental reactors that were built through the entire history of the nuclear industry.
Isn't that the corner of Eastern Oregon? Excuse me, Chuck.
No,
that's not the Eastern Oregon nuclear site. Yeah, but I mean, isn't there a site right across? I guess that's a naval site. Louisa Hamachek was showing me that there's actually a serious nuclear area down there that I didn't know about on Idaho and Eastern Oregon, right at the border, right across on the Idaho side. But that's a naval site.
Never seen that.
Yeah,
the
so
naval
I had
site is further east. It's called the Idaho National Laboratory, and it's almost to the Wyoming border. It stretches from Idaho Falls, into it's on a high plateau, and it's there. You can drive through it. You drive through the Craters of the Moon National Monument, and if you keep heading east, then you start driving through the INL.
Chuck, this brings me up to this. This modular thing that they've been talking about, this new scale design, which came out of the University of Oregon, right?
Oregon State University.
Oregon State University, that's right. It's Oregon State University. I should know. I'm a duck. Sorry, guys. But anyways, the whole idea that we do not, how can you say that nuclear industry is even a sustainable, viable industry when they can't make a cookie cutter nuclear power reactor? Every single nuclear reactor plant they have ever built is a different design. There's no two alike, meaning they've never really made it work, ever. Well, they keep trying new ones. And the problem is our planet isn't big enough to keep experimenting on us.
Well, that's what they're hoping to do with this. I mean, this is one of the things that they talked about, is creating a modular reactor system. And they tried to do that with the bigger reactors that Westinghouse has been building in South. Supposedly, this was going to save a lot of money. They were going to build these modular pieces and then assemble it all on site. But unfortunately, their little Lego blocks didn't fit together properly when they were actually brought to the site. The level of precision is extremely high that needs to be. Nuclear power is a very difficult thing to do. This is the thing that nuclear scientists gloss over, is how hard it is to build a nuclear reactor and have it run safely. They want to reassure everyone and make everyone feel like it's an easy thing, and then they begin to believe their own propaganda. But once again, this brand new reactor system that they've designed proved to be more difficult to assemble than they originally planned, and now they have on-site facilities that are remachining and machining parts for it. And again, they're building unique reactors, just as you described. They're not exactly, they're having to retrofit them so they aren't, identical. The idea with the small modular reactor is that these reactors would be built 100% in factories. They would stamp them out and then ship off these modules, reactor modules, to the plant and install them. It hasn't been done yet. They haven't produced any portion of that supply chain at this point, and there's no reason to believe that they would be able to do it any more successfully than they have with any other aspect of the nuclear power industry.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a matter of fact, that's what's got Areva is in terrible trouble right now, and the Electricité de France. France for years was held up as the shining example of how to do nuclear right, because they built reactors that were of a more standardized design. They brought them in at or under budget, and they brought on a lot of nuclear energy in the 80s. They're now 70% of their electricity comes from nuclear energy in France. And for years, it was kind of hilarious to see these Republicans and conservatives who normally hate France, make fun of France, then turn around and say how wonderful France was for how they had developed nuclear energy.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a scandal that's broken out with the French nuclear safety authorities discovering, first with some of the new reactors that they've been trying to build and being way over budget, just like the Westinghouse reactors, was that some of the key components, structural components, were the steel had the incorrect amount of carbon in it, which would make them more brittle than they should be designed to be, which, of course, a brittle reactor part means a part that could disintegrate and cause a nuclear power accident. So they were in the process of trying to figure out if they're going to have to completely throw away these, in the case of the reactor parts, $1 billion worth of component, or what they were going to do. And then they discovered that the same problem with the carbon content existed with existing reactors. So there are 20 reactors in France that they believe have carbon steel parts that are not up to the standard that they should be, and they're trying to figure out what to do about that, especially with a country that's 70% reliant on nuclear energy. To have that kind of a vulnerability discovered is just devastating. So
I think they've made a huge mistake investing in that much nuclear. I think that is going to be the death of the Western culture. But it's really sad because all over China they're putting these things up, and India. And the sad part in India is when there is genetic mutations in kids with extra arms and legs, they think that they're gods. You know what I mean? Literally, there's stories of that over there. People are born, they're not shocked with these mutations. They think that it's, a sign that this is a blessed child. And it's like, Lord, I mean, it's kind of like Rick Perry at the hands of the Department of Energy. Like he has no concept of upper physics. None. He has no idea what he's doing. Now, just clean it up, put some dirt on top of it.
On the plus side with India, the economics of nuclear has kept it from really taking off. And solar is starting to take off in India. So hopefully the government won't insist on them building up too much in the nuclear area. But they're doing some of it, as you say. They're doing a lot more of it in China right now because they have a lot more cash, they have been building. I think they're
the problem though with building a lot of
24 nuclear reactors in China. Wow.
Yeah, but once those things start going bad, those CEOs are going to be put to death. I mean, China doesn't mess around. If you lie to the government about the results of what your business is doing, you do a lot of financial collusion and China is not like what we consider a democracy, capitalistic democracy. It's a capitalistic communist state where you mess over the state and they'll find someone to take your place permanently. I mean, it's not the same. So maybe that's kind of the blessing, but it's beyond comprehension, Chuck, that our elected officials are still hanging on to the concept that war is our future. And that is exactly where we're headed right now. The whole idea of the war on the water protectors, the pipelines, the nuclear, the people who are saying stop nuclear. Like we have renewables, as you say. We have the possibility of renewables. And I think the reason why Trumpy wants to do the renewables is because it's immediate jobs. We can build the nation by, putting our people to work creating renewable energy, at least for a short while we saturate the market with solar panels and wind.
I hadn't heard that Trump favored that. I'm hoping that he does. But
Well, I know he's talking to these people. He wants
been.
to put in the pipelines, but let's face it, the pipelines are going to take a while.
I'm not talking about the pipelines. You were saying that he favored renewables. I hadn't heard that ever.
Well, it's not that he favors them, but he is talking to the people about renewables. He is talking to those companies. He is beginning to open the door. He says he's willing to talk to everybody, which, I mean, we'll just see how that happens. Maybe he's trying to figure out how to stop them. You know what I mean? Because we know for a fact that the sanctions against Russia are going to be lifted. Exxon's going to be able to get their big pot of gold in Russia. That is a done deal. And in fact, I wouldn't at all be surprised if we see American-Russian partnership in the open and they start, asking for Americans to go to Russia to, work there. I mean, it's this whole concept about how Trump is going to play the game. They're just bringing in straight up open fascism, frankly. I mean, this is what they're I was not as concerned about Trumpy before, right after the election as I am now. His cabinet picks are beyond horrendous. Every one of them are an indication that they plan on gutting our country. Every safety net we have built up over the last 70 years, shit canned. It's all going to be gone. And when people realize what that means.
The false news. I mean, this whole thing over the weekend where they basically tried to intimidate the media into repeating just absolute ridiculous lies that about the size of the rally and and then Trump going to the CIA headquarters and with a large group of people to applaud him, and then trying to say that he never that the media made up the whole thing about him picking a fight with the intelligence agency.
Right.
I mean, this is that frightens me as much as anything because he's really trying to control. He's putting out blatant propaganda and lies, and then daring the media to call him on it. And when they do, attacking the crap out of them and saying that their credibility's bad. Kellyanne Conway gets on NBC and says, well, he presented alternative facts, and then
like
saying,
a good abused wife that she is.
Right. Like the mainstream media only has 14% support in the country. So, they aren't going to believe you. I mean, that's just like, that was it's such an obvious slap and an attempt to intimidate an already fairly intimidated group of reporters, honestly. I'm hoping that this is so blatant that even our passive mainstream media can't take it, and that it actually will cause some group of Woodward and Bernsteins to actually start digging and help us undermine the legitimacy of this presidency, because I think it's really going to be critical.
I don't disagree with you, but really the idea of Trump not being president and Mike Pence being president puts a streak down my back even worse. Like, really? Oh my God, no. I mean, I just hope he's not just so completely dumb that we have to get him out of office. I mean, at least there's a shield between the presidency and Mike Pence with Trump in office. I mean, I call Mike Pence the American Taliban. I actually have been victimized by Mike Pence's office, so I have experience about how he misuses power. Yeah, I called him and I have a couple times on this radio show. I called his office, I believe it was in 2009, right after the collapse of the economy. It was like the following year, and the Republicans had to extend unemployment benefits to the people right at Christmas time. It was a short-term bill that the Democrats had posed because their unemployment benefits were about to run out. And he and Boehner stood in front of a microphone and were like huffing and puffing over how proud they were that they held the budget in line and they're not going to give these freeloaders any more money. So I called his office and said, look, I don't mind paying extra taxes. It's Christmas time. It's winter. Somebody in New York might die or freeze to death or go starving.
Mm-hmm.
They said, thank you very much. We'll tell the congressman your views. 5 days later, I get a call from Sergeant Donica here in Eugene, Oregon. He is a private investigator hired by the city. I guess he's one of their detectives, Detective Donica. He had been investigating me since that phone call. They called the Capitol Police and said I threatened to murder their staff. I'm like, what? I never even spanked my kids. I do not believe in violence. Like, I am a hardcore passive resistance person. I am in no way believe in violence under any means.
Wow.
And I mean, I let into him for 10 minutes. I was furious. I said, you know what? This is the long arm of intimidation. And those guys know that I don't have the money to sue them for slander. And I wrote a big long letter explaining everything to what I said, to my congressman, to President Barack Obama, to my two senators. I sent a letter to Mike Pence's office. And I mean, not one response out of any of them, not one peep, nothing. A friend of mine who's an activist here in town said, anytime you call a Republican's office and tell them that their actions are going to harm someone, you're going to get investigated. So, you know what? I am just not interested in having Mike Pence as president because you think our country is military. I mean, we're headed that way. We are headed towards militarism. And frankly, it reminds me of the Bush-Cheney presidency where we have the idiot as the front guy and then the evil behind him, just like at the inauguration. You know, Bush was up there playing footsie with that rain jacket and acting like an idiot, all coked up and drunk, while Dick Cheney in back of him in his little white hat was kind of like smug and smiling, going, that's great, Georgie, keep the camera off me, keep going. Because nobody even noticed Dick Cheney sitting behind the shrub. So these people, they count on Americans not paying attention. They count on that, us being distracted.
I think that's true. I agree. I believe that the Republicans in Congress, the Mike Pence and Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell cabal, really are hoping that Trump will be satisfied with just running around, you know,
grabbing girls
while they
imagine all the of the aides in the White House.
Right, but that they will be able to get down to business. And where they get concerned is when he makes these pronouncements that are populist, that are things that they don't want to do, like build up infrastructure, you know, because that would cost money, and heaven forbid that we, you know, increase the national debt. But, you know, so now the Democrats have proposed $1 trillion infrastructure buildup that it'll be interesting to see how Trump and the Republicans in Congress handle this whole infrastructure issue. Also, just the same way with how they're going to replace Obamacare, because Trump's made a lot of grand statements about how he's going to, you know, extend health care to everyone and it's going to be affordable. You know, I'm not sure how the Republicans do all that. This whole thing really is such an intricate house of cards. It's amazing. It's both terrifying but also a very fragile coalition that they have built up. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're trying to insist that the media repeat all their lies, is because they realize they're going to need a lot of lies to somehow make it seem logical to the American people.
That's exactly. Well, you know what, Chuck? I think a lot of people are naive about this. It's not a fragile house of cards. They're just liars. They have had 8 years. They've been bitching and moaning about Obamacare for 8 years. They could have had their plan all rolled out and ready to go, but instead, they dug in deep on day one and kicked kids off of their parents' health insurance. They rolled back the pre-existing condition clause. I mean, they did kicked all the kids off of insurance. They made sure all the children are not covered now. These are big tactics that even if they roll something out in 8, 9 months, they're telling us, oh, well, it's going to take some time. Well, they've had 8 years of taking their time. So even
Well,
if they take one more year, their friends in the insurance industry are going to make billions just by doing what Trumpy did on the first day.
no, I think you're wrong about that. I think the thing that he signed was that states that they won't enforce if the states deviate from what the Affordable Health Care Plan.
I'm pretty sure
There's
that's
that,
that.
that's all that they've signed so far.
I think I
They,
disagree with
and
you
they
because
want it. They
the
want it.
Senate
They
and
want
the Senate, the
26
vote.
years.
But Chuck,
They want to
the,
keep the kids on. They do. They realize how popular that is, so they're going to try to figure out some way to do that. I don't know what they're going to do about pre-existing conditions, because but that's another. This is why I say it's a house of cards, because I mean there are aspects of Obamacare that are popular and that a lot of people are relying on now. So as messed up as that system is, I mean, we're so much better off with a single payer system. And the other thing is that the healthcare industry is going to take a bath if the Republicans just trash this thing without replacing it. And I don't think that they're going to want that to happen. So it'll be interesting to see how they weigh in, to influence these Republicans that are so normally extremely industry dominated. That's the weird thing about Obamacare. Here it was, a Republican program supported by traditionally Republican interests in the health industry, and not a single Republican voted for it because of their partisan strategy to try to undermine Obama. And now they're on record opposing this thing that's basically a Republican plan, and they don't have anything to replace it with because they never bothered to care about policy in their opposition to Obama anyway. As lame as we felt Obama was and as feckless as he was, there was at least some inherent logic to what he was doing, and that's the problem the Republicans have now. There was never any logic to their positions in Congress. It was all about politics and opposing what he was doing. So I do believe it's fragile because the public, at some point, they've got to produce something. Just like years ago when Obamacare was being considered, I said, you better pass something that's good because, at some point people are going to notice what it's doing, and then you're going to have it hanging around your neck. So, I mean, there's a reason to push hard and get a really good health care plan in place as opposed to one that's, let's go to path of least resistance and get all of the healthcare industry on board and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's nice, except that you end up with Obamacare that a lot of people are unhappy with. And the Republicans are going to be in the same boat because they're going to own whatever replaces Obamacare. And it better be good because people will notice, and that is if we still have a free press. So I think that's one of the reasons why they're trying to erode that, is so that they can control the news.
that is if they go after the free press. Can you even imagine those words came out of your mouth, Chuck? I mean, in America? I mean, this is the astounding part, and that Americans would stand. See, my thing is about Saturday, we had millions of people in the street. So now what are you going to do about it? What's going to happen with that? I mean, what we showed was that we are a sleeping giant. But everybody are they all going to go back to sleep? I mean, so far we've appointed the Tillerson guy. He passed out of committee. I mean, yeah. I still think we can vote, pressure the Republicans to say no. Just because he passed out of committee doesn't mean it happened.
Well,
but in terms of Obamacare, sure. let me get back to this. Didn't the Senate and the Congress both pass those resolutions to revoke those? I think the executive orders that he imposed were different, and I think my thinking was a little bit wrong. I think that the Congress has passed and revoked those rules, and then the president.
Yeah, but it hasn't been endorsed. They haven't done it since Trump has been president. They did it under Obama, and Obama vetoed it. So at this point, now they know that if they don't have the cover of Barack Obama to veto their irresponsible legislation. So now they're having to figure out, okay, how do we do this?
Okay, I get you. Okay. Now, thanks for clearing that up, because now I understand really. And they did use Obama as a cover for and this is the issue with them now. They really do have to figure this out. But I do believe that part of why they're doing this is for the money. I mean, they really do look at us as assets on a balance sheet, and Americans are going to be seeing that more and more and more. And I don't know if the Democrats will be able to get this out, but one of the plans in his tax reform plan is to cut out earned income credit. That would seriously hurt a lot of people. That would, I mean, they're already, I believe the child tax credit is mostly going away. Those child tax credits are bye-bye. But if the earned income credit, if they really do make that effort and push on that, I think that would get the pitchforks out. So maybe they'll back down on that one.
Well, cutting out the child care credit really does get us back to the slogan of conception, or life begins at conception and ends at birth. The Republican slogan on their philosophy of life.
Well, the child care credit is a joke anyways. Most people don't get to use it, and what you do get to use is your maximum child care deduction is $2,400. Mm-hmm. So that's most people who put their kids in daycare, they spend that in 2-3 months. I mean, it's a ridiculous. I mean, the whole tax system
credit is pretty serious, though. Yeah.
Well, because the money goes right back into the economy.
Well, and also I believe it's been a while since I qualified. I actually got it back in the 90s for a couple of years. I qualified, but seems to me that they even give it out even if you aren't paying taxes. I'm not positive about that.
Mm-hmm. They do give it out when you're not paying taxes. It's about giving the poor people money so they can make it through to the next year and keep the machine going. As long as you're working, it's earned income. You can't be not working and get earned income credit. You have to work. So that's the idea.
Even if you aren't paying taxes, you still get it. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're so poor, you don't hit the tax table.
Right, exactly. I mean, this is why we have President Trump, is the erosion of people's income. I mean, really, that is.
It's true.
And the fact that the Democrats were okay with that for way too long.
That's true, Chuck. You are right. Republicans, that's true.
But anyway, let's circle back to nuclear here for a sec.
Please.
With the small modular reactors. This is another boondoggle waiting to happen. It's already our federal government's already committed to $230 million of matching money to match Fluor's money to design it. And now they're going to be coming back to Congress trying to figure out ways to subsidize it, because the cost of the power is going to be at least 3 times what the market is right now. It makes no sense to be building a small modular reactor financially. So they're going to have to get Congress to put up federal money to subsidize it. Right now, the first reactor they're planning on building in Idaho would be built with financing from the Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems, which is 45 small public power agencies. Some of them city agencies, others counties, but anyway, public power. That is to say, the people elect the people in charge of these, and they're public agencies, not nonprofit agencies. So they can borrow money a little cheaper than private industry can. So that's one advantage they have. But even though that's an advantage, they wouldn't be able to finance these reactors and then pay them back without some major subsidy from Congress. So I think that's going to be something we're going to really have to watch for and hit on and fight as hard as we can, because
Get people in Utah to
stop
contact
these.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, not just Utah, but the whole rest of the country will be
Idaho.
subsidized. And if we allow these baby reactors to be built, then we're going to have a whole lot of baby reactors all around the world. So I think this is what we want to do is stop this new reactor program before it gets started. So I'm hoping that the listeners will keep an eye out on this, and that we can alert them as time goes on as to what's happening with this program. So I think
And this is in Idaho, the
new
first
hope
one.
for the nuclear industry. Well, yeah, they also the Tennessee Valley Authority has applied for a small modular reactor site at Clinch River in Tennessee. They don't have plans to do it right away because they are over leveraged financially already, having completed the Watts Bar reactor and with a lot of cost overruns. So they don't really have the money to build or the interest immediately to build a small modular reactor system, but they're going to bank this site, and then as they get a little more out of debt, they probably will revive the idea of doing a small modular reactor system there. So, but the Sierra Club in Tennessee and Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League and a number of other Southern Alliance for Clean Energy and a number of other regional groups down there are fighting the Tennessee Valley Authority's citing of this site, and they're also helping us in fighting the small modular reactor proposal before the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
That's good. So you've partnered up with them.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, and Union of Concerned Scientists, Ed Lyman has been a critic of the NuScale design, and now that it's actually out, he's going to be analyzing it in specifics, because we can now see what it is that they're proposing to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and he's going to use his expertise to, find what deficiencies it has. He's already identified a couple. One is that the economics of this, they're relying on having zero evacuation zone. They're claiming that because its reactors are so safe that they won't even need an evacuation zone.
Well, that was my question to you. You said that they were going to put the water underneath the ground, right? So what happens if there's a problem with the water, or it has a meltdown or something? It could go into the groundwater. It could go, or we have an earthquake and it disturbs their underground tanks. It could really literally contaminate the groundwater, right?
Sure. And that is part of the problem, is that when you're below grade, you have to rely upon, the visibility is just inherently less. I mean, you have when you're talking about radioactive materials that are so intensely hot and radioactive that they have to be kept away from people, you have a lot of dilemmas. I think you probably talked on the show previously about elevated spent fuel pools, how if you have a reactor like the boiling water reactors that melted down in Fukushima that has a pool of water that stores this intensely hot spent nuclear fuel that's 6 stories up, and then there's a crack in that pool, it can drain away really quickly. Mm-hmm. Well, having your pool underwater has some advantages over that, because if you have a crack in the pool there, the water migrates from it more slowly. It doesn't just drain away, through the crack. It has to go through rock and soil, and there's counter pressure that causes it to leak more slowly, and that's what they're counting on with this small modular reactor system. They're claiming because these reactors are only 50 megawatts each and they're self-contained inside of their modules, that by the time the water, in a worst-case accident, if the water drained away, it would take 3 days to drain away, and during that period of time, you might have a meltdown inside of the module, but it wouldn't get out of the module. It would cool down enough that the module would contain it.
Yeah, but it could go into the
And you'd have
groundwater.
12 little messes inside of your drain pool, but you wouldn't have release to the environment, is their claim. That's what they're claiming. So we need to figure out how credible that is.
Well, all we have to do is look at what happened at Hanford. We see how the sludge is getting into the groundwater. They said, oh, it can't really get there that bad. It's way worse than they ever thought it was.
Right.
And so
Yeah,
we do have
the claims
experience.
of the nuclear industry have a bad history of being proven incorrect.
Well, this is why we have Trump. It's exactly the same, blinders go on. Like the words he says do not match the action that he takes. He wants to be a nice guy. So does every abusive husband who goes home and beats his wife by the end of the night. They feel guilty the next day, but they can't control themselves. I mean, this is really a mental illness that we must confront in the nuclear industry. Their complete denial and abusive attitude towards all life on our planet has got to end. I mean, they need therapy, frankly. I mean, they need help. It's narcissistic personality disorder. I mean, they call themselves the nuclear priesthood, for goodness sakes.
Well, I don't think they call themselves that, but people call them that, and it's not an inaccurate description.
Albert Weinberg referred to themselves as nuclear priesthood in 1972.
Really?
Yes, I have the article. It was the first time the phrase was used. It was the first time he said we have a Faustian agreement with, humanity. We have to look up to them forever in perpetuity because they're the smart people who know how to handle the nuclear waste. Well, so far they have massively failed, in my view. So this is what drives me to this radio station every single day, because I'm just appalled at my own ignorance, my own willingness to have gone along with it for over 57 years. I mean, I guess that's my claim to fame, growing up next to San Onofre nuclear power plant and not even knowing it was a nuclear power plant. I thought it was an observatory my entire life until I moved here, until after Fukushima. When I discovered that they were shutting down San Onofre, and I looked at it where it was on the map, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the observatory.
Sort of looks like one, doesn't it, with those conical shapes?
Yes, and this is why I give Americans a pass for being complete dumbasses, because I have to admit it myself. I'm post-ignorant. I get it, and this is how easy it is. We have all bought the Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? Like, we drank it long ago. But you know what? It's time to clean up our diet, time to save our planet. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Well, Chuck, we have about a minute and a half left. Do you want to tell people how to find your website or any actions that you're getting on that maybe they can get involved in?
Yeah, you should definitely come. I think that the best site to go to is not our PSR website, because we work on a number of issues. If you're really worried about nuclear energy, then you need to go to nuclearfreenw.org.
Okay.
And you can find out everything about the Columbia Generating Station. There's some information about small modular reactors as well there. And then I would encourage you to go ahead and write me an email if you get this message. If you want more detailed information about the small modular reactor proposals, we'll be revamping our website, which is www.oregonpsr.org. But you can just look it up as Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility. And our section on small modular reactors has been relatively small, so we need to work on that, but we'll be upgrading that one. But if you want specific information and reports, feel free to write me at chuck@oregonpsr.org, and I can send them to you.
That's awesome, Chuck. We have about 10 seconds. Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to the Age of Fission radio show. Put your courage feet on and join us tomorrow for Heidi Lambert. We'll talk to you soon.